I've got it. Like I said, I've got a alarm set for 9:55. So I can start packing up. I got to be out of here by about 10 to get to the church down the street where I'll be speaking today. I'm going to fly through the book of Acts, the whole thing in 45 minutes. Yeah, you got to make the most of the opportunity. So, they're doing Acts down there, and Norm, the pastor's in about chapter 10. And they took a break for the Christmas break, and so they're getting back to it now, and I'm going to reorient them. Hopefully, as opposed to utterly confusing them, which is also a possibility. I usually bite off more than I can chew when I do that. I once did I did the whole books of Genesis and Exodus in one 45-minute session down there. I did Joshua to the exile, I think, down there. I did all of First and Second Samuel, summer, and first half of First Kings in one group. So, it's usually what I like to do. Okay, in our case, we're in Genesis chapter 9. We're at the end of it here. We interesting story because they come out of the ark, and there's two stories about Noah after the flood. One is the altar and the sacrifices and the covenant promise from God about never again destroying the world. So you think, oh, great, everybody's going to live happily ever after. All is well, And then the next story shows the need for the covenant that was just instituted because Ham is going to sin against his father, Noah, and bring a curse on Canaan, which will then explain why the Israelites are going to get the land of Canaan. If you're an Israelite who's receiving the book of Genesis, you have your answer before the covenant promise in chapter 15 that makes it official. It's not out of nowhere. And so I've said before, Genesis is not a bunch of stories. Hey, let's tell a history of the world starting from the beginning, and I'll tell a bunch of stories from the beginning. They have no interest in that. Everything in here serves a purpose, and it's all headed towards eventually the choosing of the people of God, and then they're being given the land of Canaan as the covenant promise, because the covenant with Abraham, from their perspective, just is a promise of land. That's the covenant promise. We think of it as more than that. In their minds, it's about the land. And the land is going to define the people of God eventually. But here we are, chapter 9. We just talked about the curse last week. It's the providence of God. It's the prerogative of the Creator to punish the Son for the Father's sin. And you're going to see that in the Bible more than once, and you just either accept it or not. And certainly, that's the way things turn out. People do things that are evil, and then generations suffer the consequences of that afterwards, and that happens all the time. And that's the case here too. Just seems to be wired into the world since the fall of Adam. And here we have it after the flood. So then there's the curse on Canaan, and then the parallel, or the opposing blessing on the other two brothers relative to Canaan as well. Canaan will serve both of them. And then we get the summary statement at the end in verse 28 that Noah lived 350 years after the flood. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. And that's going to end these gargantuan lifetimes here. I don't think he does this anymore. I was just looking at chapter 10. Yeah. Then it's just going to be this person gave birth to that person, and so forth. The lifetimes are going to get a lot shorter. All right, what have I got to say to close this up? Take a look at a couple of places in the New Testament. What do we got here? I was a little preoccupied this morning, so I didn't get a chance to set up. like I normally do. Matthew 24:37 through 39. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. He gives us further insight, Jesus does, into what was going on there. I've called it the purge. If you remember what the purge is, it's this idea that you see in movie, film, and books, where people are given a 24-hour period where they can do anything they want, and it's total chaos, and any crime is allowed, and they get it out of their system or something. And that's how I've described the period before what's called the antediluvial period, the period before the flood. Whereas in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, which all sounds fine, except he doesn't mean it that way. It's to characterize it as evil. Until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. That's scary stuff. And by definition, then, nobody anticipates it. I don't know about believers. I don't know how that works. I mean, nobody anticipated his first appearance. Nobody recognized it except for Simeon, who was awaiting the consolation of Israel. That's about it. Nobody else recognized it the first time around. My hunch is that it's going to be the second time around as well. We're not so smart at that kind of thing, figuring things out in advance. Then there's 1 Peter. Let's see. 2:5. What do we got? Doesn't look right.
Yeah, you had something highlighted down a little farther.
Oh, 1 Peter 3:20. Sorry. There's also 2 Peter 2:5. But anyway, what do you got here? 20 and 21. Christ also died for sins once for all, the just for the unjust, so that he might bring us to God, having been put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. And then we get this mysterious statement. If you think you know what he means here, you're probably wrong. In which also he went and made proclamation to the spirits now in prison, who once were disobedient, when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noah during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. And so it's this mysterious statement.
Well, the Bible talks about some spirits, some angels that God had bound till the end. I think that's what he's talking about there.
I'll go with it. What else we got? 2 Peter 2:5. For God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness, reserved for judgment. Little insight there about fallen angels. We don't get a lot of that. Not very systematic. You know, the spirit world and how that all happened, and we ended up with angels and demons. Did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the water of the brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. They were really interested. I mean, that stuff mattered to them. You know, things happen over and over again, right? They notice the patterns. It's just pattern recognition. There it is. Oh, there it is again with Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, I can see what's going to happen here. Yep, there it is. You know, people don't learn from history. When we have here the history of the people of God, the history of the world, told through the eyes of God. And so these people, these divinely inspired writers, they paid attention and they learned the lessons under the inspiration of the Spirit. They learned the lessons of what had happened in the world, what God had done in the world, and they recorded the lessons. And here's another example of it. And then Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. For this one. By faith, Noah, being warned by God about things not yet seen, that's a Hebrews idea, in reverence prepared an ark for the salvation of his household, by which he condemned the world, became an heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. So he throws Noah in with that pot of people who who are saved by faith, essentially. And its association between righteousness and faith goes all the way back now to Noah. Paul is going to take it back to Abraham, and this writer takes it all the way back to Noah, in spite of the story that you hear, that you see at the end of chapter 9 about his getting drunk and so on and so forth. So there's the application of, from their perspective, of Noah. All right. Anybody want to comment on any of that? The wrong chapter. Book. Chapter 10. Uh-oh. We got another genealogy. There's nothing I can do about it. I didn't write this stuff. I just have to teach it. Now, these are the records of the generations of reset again. These are the records of the generations of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan. I'm going to read these, but I thought about just turning on Alexander Skirby in the King James Version and let him do it, but I didn't think to do it, so now I have to do it. Anyway, and Meshech and Tiras, sons of Gomer were, I feel obligated to do it, but I'm not sure anybody's learning it, were Ashkenaz and Riphath and Togarma. I have to do this again in Acts in a little bit. The sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, and Kittim and Dodanim. Fine. From these, the coastlands of the nations, you're going to see this spreading out element now. From these, the coastlands of the nations were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. And this is anticipating what's going to happen after Babel. And so that's coming up. But already, you know, they're setting the stage for what's going to happen. So let's talk about these genealogies for a second. This is the fourth one. You had in chapter 2, the first one was of the heavens and the earth. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, same words. And that starts at, there's going to be 10 of these total altogether in the book. They're not done the way we would do them. Abraham doesn't get one. Why does Cain get a genealogy, but why does Terah get a genealogy, but Abraham doesn't? You know, you think through that stuff. We'll try to answer those questions at the time. Then chapter 5, this is the book of the generations of Adam, in the day when God created man. I wonder if these were real books. You know, people kept chronicles of their genealogies, and Moses, you know, what did Moses have in terms of sources to write this stuff? And you got to wonder whether there were written accounts of things and he had them somehow. I have no idea, but then in 6:9, these are the records of the generations of Noah. That was before the flood. And now we get his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So he's gonna go through the 3 sons and talk about how the dispersion of the nations now will happen, which will eventually land all these 7 tribes, these 7 people groups in the land of Canaan, and produce Abraham as well. Sons of Ham were Cush and Mizraim, put in Canaan. There he is in the place of emphasis at the end of the sentence. And the sons of Cush were Seba and Havilah. That's one of the rivers of Eden right there. Sabta and Ramah and Septica. Sure. Sons of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. I should have practiced this. Now Cush became the father of Nimrod. He became a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Why do we care? We don't know. He just simply, you know, these people that he's talking to probably had more tradition behind it than we have. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Here we go. Now we're into something. And Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So we're going to go back and look at Babel in a minute. And from that land, he went forth into Assyria and built Nineveh and Rehoboth, and Calah. Wow. Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. And Mizraim became the father of Ludum and Anamim and, does anybody else want to do this? And Lehabim and Neph. Huh?
You're doing a good job.
I'd like to see you try to do this. You couldn't even pronounce the names up in front of the room.
But,
To him.
you're doing a good job.
Pathrusim and Casluhim, from which came the Philistines and Nephtorim. So they're not random. So let's take a look at these places. I should have had this open.
Well, you gotta think, you gotta take in consideration, most of these descendants of these three sons basically became nations. Became a people. And that's
Let's
how
see.
the earth basically got replenished, so.
Do I have one of Babylonian Empire? Let's yeah, let's take a look here. What's a good map? Ancient Mesopotamia. Can this do it? So the point being, I think, this is anticipatory. So this is our area of the world. Here's Canaan. Assume that these people spread out from the mountains up here, I think, in Turkey, and they're going to spread out. And he's particularly interested in two kingdoms, Babylon and Assyria, which is Babel, which is Babylon, right here, and then Nineveh right here, which is Assyria. And these two kingdoms, empires, will trade back and forth. That's why this is the old Babylonian. There's an old one and a new one. So the Old Testament period is really infused with the Assyrian and Babylonian empires. Because if you look at, for example, Second Chronicles or Second Kings, it will be the Assyrian Empire at the time in 722 BC that will invade and conquer the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes, destroy it and cart them back into exile. And then it'll be the Babylonian Empire, which conquers the Assyrian Empire in 612 BC, will then invade Judah in 586 or 7 BC and cart them back into exile. So everybody ends up in exile to the east. And then by the time of Jesus, those will be, which I'll talk about today, down there. Those will be the peoples, the Jews, that'll be spread around the empire hundreds of years later. But that's probably explains why he's interested in Nimrod, because these empires trade back and forth. There's a Neo-Assyrian, I don't know the history. There's a Neo-Assyrian, meaning a new Assyrian, meaning there was an old Assyrian empire, then there's a Neo-Babylonian empire, and so forth. Eventually, the Persians are going to bring a permanent end to that in 539, when Cyrus, the great king of Persia, will conquer Babylon. And that'll be it for them. And then he's the one that will allow the Jews to come back to Canaan and repopulate and build a temple in Jerusalem and so forth. And then the great Alexander the Great will conquer Persia at the ripe old age of, I don't know, 24. What have you done, Ray? What did you do by the time you were 24? You know, but this guy conquered the Persian Empire and loved Babylon. He loved Babylon. He wouldn't go back to Greece, or, you know, I don't know. Anyway, that's how it goes. All that stuff makes its way into the New Testament and the Old Testament. You can see the infusion of that stuff. If you're into it, I certainly am. Most people aren't, but that's probably why he's interested in Nimrod, and tells this relatively long story about Nimrod. Pauses for it. There's another group here that he mentioned. Where are they? Philistines, right there. Should have left that map up. Philistines will be the people group that gives Israel the most trouble during the period of the Judges. They were along the coast in what is now Gaza, which is being destroyed, where the Palestinians live right now, along the coast of Israel. But back then, there were the 5 cities of the Philistines during the period of the Judges, period of 1 Samuel, and they were just marauders who would plunder the Egyptians. And it took until David, so it's 400 years, more than that, for them to finally get control of the situation with the Philistines. So that's probably also why he's explaining this. I've watched a documentary on that, and a couple of them, and trying to figure out who were the Philistines, because they kind of just disappeared. And you know, there's all this speculation that they were part of the sea peoples that came in. It's just mystery surrounds these kinds of people. All right, that's enough of that. It's hard to make it through, genealogy passages, but here we are. And I don't have anything more to say about, up through, where are we at here?
One thing that's kind of interesting, you
Do I have
don't
any
see
more?
anything in this chapter about three sons and how old they end up being. None of, after they lived so many years after they gave birth to all these, their sons, and then, so you don't know how long each of these, sons end up living,
Right, that was what I was meant before, yeah.
so,
But they're not interested in saying, and he lived 48 years. You know, he had other sons and daughters, and then he lived 48 years after he had the son of so, you know, it doesn't have the same thing to it.
basically, they would have been, by the time the flood got done, they would have probably been close to 100 years old, 100 years, they would have been 100 years old.
Yeah. Well, Jacob's gonna be what, 100, he was 110 when he went down to Egypt. Abraham was
He lived about 130 years.
Yeah.
So, he's back.
David was 80, fourscore or something like that, I don't remember. It's funny, were you gonna say something? We have the age of Shem where? I haven't gotten that far. Oh, I see. Well, we got some ages here still.
Okay, so I didn't go with my chapter.
Shame on me. I've been a little preoccupied this week.
So there were reports, they get up into the 400s, it looks like some.
Huh. All right. Thank you for looking ahead. Okay, let's read through it and see if there's a couple of more things that I want to bring out. I got about 10 minutes to go here or so. Okay, Canaan became the father of Sidon. Sidon is going to be a city on the coast of Israel, north of Israel. His firstborn in Heth and the Jebusite, here we go. Now it gets interesting. And the Jebusite and the Amorite and the Girgashite and the Hivite, Archite and Sinite, a lot of ites now. Arvadite and Zamorite and then Hamathite. And afterward, the families of the Canaanite were spread abroad. The territory of the Canaanite extended from Sidon as you go toward Gerar as far as Gaza. I just mentioned that in a minute. As you go toward Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham according to their families, according to their language, by their lands and by their nations. So he's very detailed in, left this open. He's very detailed in his description of Ham. He's very interested in Ham. So let's take a look at Canaan here. Where's my favorite Canaan map? I think I got too many maps. I do. I got to start naming them favorite number one, favorite number two, or something like that. What's that? Ancient Canaan, yeah. Take a look at this one. I should just get rid of most of these. That's not a very good one, but we'll look at it. All right, so what's he talking about here? This is right along the coast of the Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean. This will become Israel, all of this right here. Up here is where Jesus lived. That's where Nazareth is here somewhere. This is where he crosses over to go into ends up in the tombs. Here's the Jordan. Here's the Dead Sea. Jerusalem is right here. This is the land of the Philistines. Got what we call Gaza, what he calls Gaza in there. And the 5 cities. Extra credit for anyone who remembers the 5 cities. I don't know that I remember them.
Killian,
What?
Killian, I don't know.
Doesn't sound right. Ashdod, Askelon,
And, no,
Gaza. That's the one that Samson was from.
yeah, that's kind of what they're called.
We'll take a look at it later. Ekron and I'm missing one. Anyway, they're probably right on here. Anyway, the point is that you're gonna have these tribes, these people groups that they're gonna lump together as Canaanites that are gonna populate this land. That's why he's interested in them. And he names them off very specifically for a reason, right? These four right here, for example, they're interested, the narrative is interested in these four and Canaanites in general. Why is that the case? Let's go take a look at chapter 15. Right there, verse 19. These are the lands that God is gonna give to the Israelites. And this is the land of Canaan. And he mentions a bunch of these. The Hittite, Amorite, Canaanite, Girgashite, Jebusite, and here you have the Jebusite and the Amorite and the Girgashite and the Hivite and the Canaanites. And so he names them because everybody knows that these are the people that the Israelites are going to dispossess. So they get named right here as descendants of Ham, which is to say Canaan. Where's Canaan? Okay, Canaan became the father of blah, 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 and then off we go with these people groups. That's why I have them in a different color. Okay. Anybody want to talk about that? Not a lot to say. I feel like we're racing to get to chapter 11, which is where it gets more more interested in the sorts of things that Westerners would be interested in. But you can see it again, and these are the sons of Ham according to their families and languages. Well, that's post-Babel, really, right? I mean, Babel explains how that distinction began to arise. Also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber and the older brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, and Arpachshad, and Lud, and Aram. I'm almost done. The sons of Aram were Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. Arpachshad became the father of Shelah, and Shelah became the father of Eber. The two sons were born to Eber. The name of the one was Peleg. These names are sound familiar. For in his days, the earth was divided. We have no idea what that means, I don't think. Do we, Mike? In these days, the earth was divided. In his days?
Say that cloud since when during the flood that separated.
Or its future, Babel. His brother's name was Joktan. Joktan became the father of Almodad and Sheleph and Hazar Mabeth. You give this a try. And Jerah and Hadaram and Uzal and Diklah and Obal and Abimael and Sheba and Ophir and Havilah and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. Now their settlement extended from Mesha as you go toward Sephar, the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem according to their families, according to their languages, by their lands, according to their nations, which will happen after Babel. These are the families of Noah, according to their genealogies by their nations, and out of these the nations were separated on the earth after the flood. And I think we can presume after Babel, which is the next story. So this anticipates Babel. And maybe he's going to tell this story. Maybe he's going to do it this way. Maybe he's going to do it this way because he doesn't want to do that after Babel and intercept and disrupt the flow to Abraham. Because chapter 11 is going to start with Babel and end with Abraham. So if he puts that genealogy in there where, I guess chronologically, maybe it belongs, I don't know, or some of it does, then it disrupts that and you don't get a nice clean story from that proceeds from what could have resulted in God's destruction. Didn't because of the covenant, but you have this event with Babel that things go off the rails, but instead of going towards destruction, it heads right straight to Abraham, where there's another promise made in chapter 12, verse 1. Maybe that's what's going on. But, that's how it, that's how 10 ends. And, we're getting close to these really, really laborious genealogies. But that takes us to chapter 11, where we have the amazing story of Babel. Babel being a shortened version of Babylon. So you can go on YouTube and watch documentaries, people trying to find Babel, the location of this, and they make a pretty good case. There's archaeological evidence out there. But that's what we're gonna do next time. So this is probably a fitting place to end, since I gotta go in a few minutes anyway. I know it's shortened. I was distracted. We had genealogies to do. But that's
The five cities of Philistine was Gath,
yeah.
Ekron, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and Gaza.
All right. Yeah, it's been a while. Gath was the city that what's his name? The big guy. No, Goliath was from. We'll talk about that later. You can't refresh yourself on the whole Bible every day. So, but we'll go ahead and shut down. Nate, thanks for joining in. A little bit shortened. I don't know how much you got out of that. But this is where we are. So we'll go ahead and shut down. Rather than me start the story and end up going past 10 o'clock, which is probably what would happen if I did it. We'll go ahead. It's funny. Nobody ever complained because the teacher finished early. Only the teacher is disappointed when he finishes early. Everybody else is internally going, yay, you know. Speaking from experience. What's that? They're gonna complain when they finish late, yeah. As I would too. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut down. Thanks for coming in. Nate, I'll talk to you later if you're still out there.